Good day. I've decided to do this short video to touch on a topic which has come up in Donald Trump's impeachment or proposed impeachment. Advocates of the impeachment have been relying on what they claim to be British precedents for saying that Donald Trump, as a former president, can be impeached even though he is no longer in office and is become a private citizen. They treat impeachment as a process that was devised in Britain and which is based on British precedent, and argue that because Britain allowed impeachment of officials who had already left their posts and had become private citizens, the United States is able to do the same thing. Much focus or weight is given to the trial or impeachment of Warren Hastings, who is Governor-General of India. That impeachment of Warren Hastings began in 1785 and ended in 1795 when he was acquitted on all counts. The Constitution of the United States came into force in 1789, 6 years before the impeachment of Warren Hastings ended. What relevance an impeachment that ends after the Constitution of the United States comes into force has, I am completely unable to see, especially when that happens in an entirely different country. In addition, and for what it's worth, I would add that the impeachment of Warren Hastings, which went on for 10 years, and which was conducted in an extraordinarily malicious and vindictive way, actually ended up discrediting the whole concept of impeachment in Britain. The very last impeachment in Britain took place in 1806, barely 10 years after Warren Hastings was acquitted. If anything, the impeachment of Warren Hastings argues against the wisdom of post-resignation or post-office impeachments rather than in favour of them. But what really baffles me, and what really indeed astonishes me, is that not for the first time, Americans, when looking at these questions, when trying to understand their own constitution, should actually be wasting their time with British precedents. Obviously, the United States, or rather the founders of the United States, when they drew up the Constitution, being lawyers steeped in English common law, had some idea of how things were done in Britain, and to some extent copied those things in their Constitution. However, they were rebels against Britain. The United States Constitution is a revolutionary document, the product of the American Revolution against Britain. The very office of president, which is set out in the Constitution, is one which has no analogue in Britain. In Britain, one cannot impeach at any the figure, the person, the head of state, who is closest and most analogous to the president, who is the king or queen. There has never been an impeachment in Britain of a king or queen. The one occasion when a British monarch, Charles I, was tried, he was not impeached, but was actually tried for treason before a specially created High Court of Justice set up for the purpose by Parliament. There is no concept of a president in British law, and there is no concept of impeaching the king in British law. Given that these are revolutionary concepts, applying British constitutional ideas, obsolete British constitutional ideas, to this process in the United States today strikes me as bizarre. I don't want to go over the arguments against impeaching Donald Trump after he left office. I have already done so in a previous video. In my opinion, the points are very clear and straightforward and irrefutable. The Constitution itself, in its plain text, makes it entirely clear that the only person who can be impeached is a sitting president, not a former president. I've also made the point that this argument that people who once were presidents but who are now private citizens can nonetheless be impeached for things they did whilst in office would be incredibly unjust and unfair. It would make it possible, for example, for a future Republican Congress to impeach Bill Clinton for things which he did when he was president in the 1990s. I am sure that the founders never intended that to be the case, and there is nothing in the Constitution itself, in its text, which says that they did. I do accept that some states at that time allowed impeachment after a person had left office, Pennsylvania being one, but none of these states had any kind of official comparable to the President of the United States, and it is the President of the United States and his impeachment that we are talking about. Regardless, it has always bewildered me, this remarkable and strange deference that many American constitutional lawyers and some politicians still have towards British precedents, at least British constitutional precedents. In doing this, they deny the revolutionary nature of their own constitution and of their own democracy. Britain in the 18th century, obviously, was no sort of democracy. The United States, when it formed its constitution, was well on the way towards becoming one. One should absolutely not look to precedents established in a monarchical system to determine the rules in a republican and soon to be democratic one. When that republican and democratic system was born as a result of a revolution against that monarchical system, then the wisdom of applying the older precedents, the British precedents, becomes even more absurd and bizarre. Let us hear no more nonsense about Warren Hastings and his sorry and unhappy impeachment all the way back in the 1780s and 1790s. That is a sterile argument and there is no merit to it. Donald Trump should not be impeached. The United States Constitution makes that completely clear, and the office he held as President of the United States is one which has no analogue in British constitutional theory or law. That is all one needs to understand about this matter. Thank you very much for joining me in this program. Please check out my other programs on this channel. Please follow our main channel, the Duran, where I do programs with my colleague and friend Alex Christoforou. Please check out Alex's channel. Please also buy the great things which you will find on our shop, and look us up on our various platforms, BitChute, Library, Odyssey, and the rest. Also, support us through Patreon, Subscribestar, and PayPal, and Bitcoin also. You'll find links under this video. Thank you, and I look forward to you joining me in my next broadcast.